I turned a nasty email about my sweet aunt into the most savage takedown ever. For this story, we need to rewind about 12 years to when dedicated forums rather than Discord were more of a thing, especially with the older community. My Aunt Mabel, I'd like to add, is the sweetest, kindest, most gentle woman I have ever met. The kind of person who would gladly take the kick me sign off someone else and wear it herself to give them a break because she feels bad. She is amazing, and I love her dearly. My mother, on the other hand, is a stone-cold calculating bitch. I say this with all the love in the world, but it's true. I somehow managed to inherit both of these personalities in some ways. Give every courtesy but take no shit. I prefer to be nice, but when I am mean, I am mean. Now, let me set the stage for you. Picture a cozy living room, walls adorned with framed photos of various small dogs, mostly poodles, but with a conspicuous number of corgi pictures mixed in. This was Aunt Mabel's sanctuary, where she'd spend hours on her ancient desktop computer, the kind that made a noise like a jet engine taking off every time she booted it up. Aunt Mabel had never owned a corgi, only other small breed dogs, but gosh, she sure did love them. So she joined this cute forum of older ladies who would share pictures, stories, and cute little sparkly edits of their dogs, and support each other when someone's dog was sick. You know the drill. It was called Corgi Corner, though it wasn't exclusively for corgi owners. At least, it wasn't supposed to be. I remember the day Aunt Mabel discovered the forum. She called me, her voice brimming with excitement. "Oh, honey," she gushed, "you won't believe what I found. It's a whole community of people who love corgis as much as I do." "That's great, Aunt Mabel," I replied, genuinely happy for her. "But you don't have a corgi, do you?" "Oh, no," she chuckled. "But they welcome all small dog lovers. I've already shared some pictures of Buttons." Buttons was her toy poodle, a fluffy little thing with more personality than body mass. For weeks, all I heard about was Corgi Corner. Aunt Mabel would regale me with tales of the latest corgi antics shared on the forum, or how she'd stayed up late comforting someone whose dog was at the vet. It was heartwarming to see her so engaged and happy. But like with most communities, there's always someone who likes to stir the pot. In this case, we have, shall I say, Donna. Now Donna did have a corgi, and due to that, she felt very entitled that the forum, she in no way created, should exclude anyone who didn't. My aunt's beloved toy poodle didn't count. So she would subtly jab at those like my aunt who loved a breed they couldn't have, but no one really wanted to make waves about it, especially since my aunt would just turn the other cheek. I first heard about Donna during one of my weekly calls with Aunt Mabel. "Oh, it's nothing," she said, her voice a little less cheerful than usual. "Just a misunderstanding on the forum." "What kind of misunderstanding?" I pressed, already feeling protective. "Well," Aunt Mabel hesitated, "there's this lady, Donna. She doesn't think non-corgi owners should be on the forum. But it's okay, really. I'm sure she doesn't mean anything by it." But as the weeks went by, Donna's comments became more frequent and more pointed. She'd comment on Aunt Mabel's posts about Buttons, saying things like, "Cute, but it's no corgi, is it?" Or "This is a corgi forum, in case you forgot." Aunt Mabel, being the sweet soul she is, never confronted Donna directly. Instead, she started posting less frequently, and when she did, she'd only comment on other people's corgi pictures, never sharing anything about Buttons. Up to this point, I knew almost nothing about the community, just that it was something my aunt participated in that made her happy. But I could tell something was off. Our calls became shorter, and Aunt Mabel rarely mentioned the forum anymore. Then came the day everything changed. I was at work, mindlessly scrolling through emails, when I saw two new messages pop up in quick succession. The first was from my Uncle George, Aunt Mabel's husband. The subject line read, "Urgent, forum drama." My heart sank. I opened the email, dreading what I might find. "Dear, my name. I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to give you a heads up about a situation that's developed with your Aunt Mabel's online forum. It seems things have escalated with that woman Donna we told you about." Mabel finally worked up the courage to ask Donna to stop being mean, which resulted in the whole forum going into offensive and defensive mode. I'm picturing the virtual version of old ladies throwing tea cakes at each other and trying to ruin their fancy hats. But that's not the worst of it. Somehow, Donna has gotten a hold of Mabel's email information and contact list and had sent out a nasty email to everyone Mabel knows. Your aunt is mortified and sobbing and begging everyone not to read it. Your mom is staying with us for a while, so she's supporting Mabel as best she can, but the clear message is please don't read it, your aunt will be even more embarrassed. I know how protective you are of Mabel, so I wanted to warn you before you saw the email. Please, for Mabel's sake, try not to make a big deal out of it. Love. Uncle George. I felt a surge of anger rising in my chest. How dare this Donna woman upset my sweet Aunt Mabel? But before I could fully process my rage, I noticed the second email. The sender's name made my blood boil. Donna barks a lot. Not my style. I took a deep breath, cracked my knuckles, and opened the email. It was the blandest, cattiest shit ever about how my aunt is just a corgi lover wannabe, how she's only so nice on the surface and it's all fake, how her edits are basically trash, and how everyone who knows her in real life should try to teach her to mind her place. If it wasn't aimed at the meekest woman on the planet, it would barely have qualified as cruel. This woman knew her target, though. And knew she wouldn't hit back. Donna probably assumed my aunt would quietly quit the forum and it would all blow over since this was in private emails and not on the forum. Ever see someone in a movie tilt their head and hear the cracking in their neck? That was me. I leaned back in my office chair, ignoring the curious glances from my coworkers. This called for a special kind of response. I cracked my knuckles again, took a swig of my now cold coffee, and started typing. My response was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive writing. I started by saying I understand how hard things like this can be when drama comes between friends, and how Donna, as a presumably 16-year-old, has a lot of growing up to do to understand how adult relationships work. Dear Donna, I began, my fingers flying over the keyboard, I hope this email finds you well. I must say, I was quite surprised to receive your message about my Aunt Mabel. As someone who I can only assume is a teenager, given the content and tone of your email, I understand that navigating adult relationships can be challenging. I went on to point out all of her points and how they seemed like such small, strange things to fixate on, and promised that when she grows up, she'll understand how silly and pointless it is to talk about. Your concerns about my aunt's participation in a corgi forum despite not owning a corgi herself seem, frankly, quite trivial. I'm sure as you mature, you'll come to realize that shared interests and passions can bring people together, regardless of specific ownership status. After all, one doesn't need to own a particular breed of dog to appreciate its charm and appeal. I gently lectured her on how using someone's passions online to try to harm them in the real world is dangerous, not only for them but for young Miss Donna who doesn't have the maturity, experience, empathy, or grace yet to know how small and childish it all makes her look, while not making my aunt look bad at all. I must express my concern about your decision to use my aunt's online activities as a means to potentially harm her real-world relationships. This kind of behavior is not only inappropriate but potentially dangerous. It shows a lack of understanding about the boundaries between online and offline life, something that I'm sure you'll develop a better grasp of as you grow older. It was the most saccharine, gentle, condescending, and brutal takedown I could manage. It was the kindly teacher with the barbed microaggressions hitting her ego at every single step. I turned this petty, catty bitch in her 60s into the image of a bratty immature teenager lashing out against someone who she was jealous of because they were liked more. I can only imagine that your actions stem from a place of insecurity. Perhaps you feel threatened by my aunt's popularity on the forum, despite her not owning a corgi. It's natural to feel jealous sometimes, but as you mature, you'll learn healthier ways to deal with these emotions. I ended it with a flourish. And just in case you haven't caught on, let me spell it out, fuck you, Donna. I hit reply all without hesitation. And waited. The next half hour was the longest of my life. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to the email. Had I gone too far? Not far enough. Would Aunt Mabel be upset with me for interfering? Just as I was contemplating sneaking out for an early lunch to escape my racing thoughts, my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered cautiously, "Hello?" What I heard next was not what I expected. My mother was laughing. Not just laughing, but howling with laughter, the kind that makes it impossible to speak. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in years. "Mom." I asked, confused. Are you okay? It took a while for her to catch her breath enough to speak. Oh, honey, she managed between giggles, you really outdid yourself this time. Slowly, through fits of laughter, my mom recounted what had happened. Apparently, when my reply all came in, Uncle George saw it was from me and mentioned it to Aunt Mabel. My sweet, gentle aunt was horrified, certain that I had sent some scathing, profanity-laden tirade in her defense. So, my uncle read it privately first. And by about halfway through, he was laughing so hard he could barely continue. That's when he decided this was too good not to share. Your uncle, my mom gasped, still giggling, he printed it out. And then he read it aloud to me and your aunt. I could picture the scene, Uncle George, his mustache twitching with suppressed laughter, reading my email in his best serious voice. Aunt Mabel, probably wringing her hands and looking mortified at first, then slowly realizing the humor in the situation. And my mom, no doubt, cackling like a hyena from the start. Your aunt kept saying, she knows Donna is in her 60s, right? Mom continued, setting off another round of laughter. And when George got to the end, oh, honey, you should have seen it. He delivered that last line with so much venom, I thought he might burst a blood vessel. I couldn't help but grin. So, Aunt Mabel's not mad? Mad? Oh, sweetie, no. Flustered, yes. A bit embarrassed, sure. But mostly, I think she's just relieved. And maybe a tiny bit proud, though she'd never admit it. Just then, I heard Uncle George's voice in the background. Is that her? Let me talk to her. There was a shuffling sound, and then my uncle's warm, slightly gruff voice came on the line. Well, if it isn't our knight in shining armor, he chuckled. Hi, Uncle George, I said, suddenly feeling a bit sheepish. I hope I didn't overstep. Overstep? Kid, you just did what the rest of us were too polite to do. And let me tell you, it was a masterpiece. I've never seen anyone taken down so thoroughly while being so, what's the word? Genteel about it. I could hear the smile in his voice as he continued, I want you to know, this is the first time since this whole mess started that I've seen your aunt smile. Really smile, you know? So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Anytime, Uncle George. Nobody messes with Aunt Mabel on my watch. That's my girl, he said proudly. Now, I'd better go. Your aunt is trying to figure out how to make her computer forget about the whole thing. I think she's about to unplug it entirely. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction. I had defended my aunt, made my family laugh, and put a bully in her place. Not a bad day's work. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, the saga of Donna and the Corgi Corner was far from over. A few days later, I received another email from Uncle George. The subject line this time read, "You won't believe this." Intrigued, I opened it immediately. Dear, my name. I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to give you an update on the forum situation, and let me tell you, it's a doozy. Remember how your email was sent to everyone on Mabel's contact list? Well, it turns out that one of those contacts was also a member of the Corgi Corner forum. And this person, bless their heart, decided to post the entire email exchange on the forum itself. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh no, poor Aunt Mabel. But here's the kicker, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. The forum members are laughing their heads off at your takedown of Donna. They're calling you the Corgi Crusader, even though you don't have a Corgi either, but I guess Small Dog Defender doesn't have the same ring to it. Mabel is still a bit flustered by all the attention, but I can tell she's secretly pleased. She's been getting messages of support from forum members she's never even interacted with before. Some of them are even sharing their own Donna stories. Turns out she's been a thorn in quite a few sides. The best part? The forum moderators have reviewed the whole situation and decided to ban Donna for her behavior. Your aunt is over the moon, she gets to keep her Corgi friends without the constant negativity. I just wanted you to know the impact you've had. You didn't just stand up for Mabel, you've helped create a more positive environment for a whole community of dog lovers. Mabel wants to call you later to thank you herself, but I think she's still working up the courage. You know how she is about confrontation, even the good kind. Thanks again, kiddo. You're a real firecracker, you know that? Love. Uncle George. I leaned back in my chair, a grin spreading across my face. Who would have thought that my spur-of-the-moment email would have such far-reaching consequences? I felt a swell of pride, not just for standing up for Aunt Mabel, but for inadvertently improving things for a whole community of dog lovers. Later that evening, as promised, I received a call from Aunt Mabel. Her voice was soft and a little shaky, but I could hear the smile in it. "Hello, dear," she said. I just wanted to thank you for what you did." "Ah, Mabel, you don't need to thank me," I replied. "Nobody messes with my favorite aunt." She chuckled softly. "You're sweet to say that. But I'm your only aunt, remember?" "Doesn't make it any less true," I countered. There was a pause, and I could almost hear her gathering her courage. "I have to admit," she said finally, "when I first heard about your email, I was mortified. I thought you might have, well, said some not-so-nice things." I couldn't help but laugh. "Well, I did say one not-so-nice thing," I admitted. "But only at the very end." Aunt Mabel giggled, a sound that warmed my heart. "Yes, your uncle made quite a production of that part. I've never heard him use that kind of language before." We chatted for a while longer, with Aunt Mabel filling me in on the latest forum gossip. Apparently, my email had become something of a legend, with people quoting bits of it in response to any hint of drama. "You know," Aunt Mabel said, her voice turning thoughtful, "I've been thinking about getting a corgi." I nearly dropped my phone in surprise. "Really? What about buttons?" "Oh, I'd never get rid of buttons," she exclaimed. "But, well, I'm not getting any younger. And after all this, I feel like I've found a whole new family on that forum. It might be nice to have a corgi of my own to share with them." I smiled, imagining Aunt Mabel with a corgi waddling at her heels. "I think that's a great idea, Aunt Mabel. And hey, if you need any help shutting down haters, you know who to call." She laughed, a full, hearty laugh that I hadn't heard in years. "Oh, I don't think that'll be necessary. But thank you, dear, for everything." As we said our goodbyes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. What had started as a simple act of defending my aunt had turned into something much bigger. It had brought joy back into Aunt Mabel's life, cleaned up a toxic element in an online community, and even inspired my aunt to pursue a long-held dream. In the weeks that followed, Aunt Mabel became more active on the forum than ever. She shared pictures of her corgi research, asked for advice on breeders, and even started a thread for honorary corgi owners, a place for people who loved corgis but didn't own one yet. And me. Well, I became the favorite niece. But to be fair, I'm the only one. Still, I wear that title with pride, knowing that I played a small part in making my aunt's world a little brighter and a whole lot corgier. The Great Corgi Forum Showdown may have ended, but for Aunt Mabel, it was just the beginning of a new adventure. And somewhere out there, I like to think Donna learned a valuable lesson about kindness, community, and the power of a well-crafted email.